When we think of World War II, certain images come to mind. We see the beaches of Normandy, the frozen streets of Stalingrad, and the Blitz over London. These are the dominant narratives, etched into our memory through films and history books. Yet, hidden in the shadows of these well-known tales is another, equally monumental story. It is the story of the largest volunteer army in history, over 2.5 million Indian men and women who served the British Empire in its darkest hour. Their contribution was a central pillar of the Allied war effort, too often forgotten. These were not conscripts, they were volunteers. They came from every corner, villages of the Punjab to the remote hills of Nagaland, farmers, clerks, princes, and untouchables. Why did over 1 million Indian men volunteer to fight for the British Raj, an empire that held their own nation in subjugation? The question is profound, and the answer is not one, but 1 million individual stories, a complex mosaic of personal motivations and powerful societal pressures. From bustling recruitment depots in Punjab to quiet village squares in the south, the call to arms was answered for reasons as diverse as the men themselves. For a vast number, the primary driver was stark economic reality. In a land where the failure of a single monsoon could mean ruin, the army offered a lifeline. It promised security, 3 guaranteed meals a day, a sturdy uniform, and boots to replace worn-out sandals. More importantly, it offered a steady salary, a portion of which was sent home as a precious money order. This small sum could mean the difference between survival and starvation, allowing a family to pay off crippling debts to the local moneylender, or secure a sister's marriage. For a young man facing a future of backbreaking labor in parched fields, military service was a tangible escape from a cycle of poverty and despair. But it was never just about money. Woven deeply into the fabric of Indian society was the concept of a potent blend of honor, reputation, and respect. This was particularly true in communities the British designated as martial races: Sikhs, Punjabi Muslims, Pathans, and Gurkhas. The British, drawing on their own class-based ideas, believed these groups were inherently more suited to warfare. This colonial theory, in turn, was embraced by the communities themselves, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. For generations, military service became a hereditary calling, a rite of passage. A son enlisting in his father's or grandfather's regiment wasn't just getting a job, he was upholding a sacred family tradition, bringing immense pride to his village, and securing his family's social standing. The decision to enlist was also shaped by complex political currents. While many nationalists called for resistance against the colonial war effort, others, including a young Mohandas Gandhi during the First World War, argued for a different strategy. They believed that loyal service and sacrifice on the battlefield would demonstrate India's maturity and worthiness, creating undeniable leverage in the demand for self-rule. This political gamble was amplified by a sophisticated British propaganda machine. Posters and recruiters didn't just speak of loyalty to the King Emperor, they spoke in a language that resonated locally. They invoked religious duty, clan rivalries, and tales of legendary warriors, framing the war as a grand adventure and a chance to prove one's manhood. And for a young man who had never ventured beyond his district, the promise of adventure was an intoxicating lure, the chance to see the world, to cross the Kala Pani, the dark waters, and set foot in fabled lands like France, Mesopotamia, or East Africa, was an opportunity for a life less ordinary. So they came for pay, for pride, for politics, for a glimpse of a world beyond their own. Each man carried his own reasons, his own hopes, and his own fears. The Indian Army of the British Raj was not a monolith. It was a vast and complex institution built, soldier by soldier, on the foundations of need, honor, ambition, and the simple, powerful human desire for a better life. The Indian soldiers' war was global. Indian divisions were at the heart of early fighting in North Africa. 4th and 5th Indian divisions fought across Egypt and Libya. They helped liberate Eritrea and Abyssinia. They held crucial sectors at El Alamein and blunted the Africa Corps. From the desert to Italy's mountains, the 4th, 8th, and 10th pushed up the peninsula. At Monte Cassino, repeated assaults brought immense casualties and legends of courage. Sepoy Kamal Ram and Subadar Richpal Ram won Victoria Crosses, emblems of thousands of Jawans far from home. Their campaigns tied down Axis forces crucial to D-Day's success. In the Med and Middle East, the Indian Army was central and resilient. In Burma's dense jungles, they faced their greatest test, and won their most decisive victory. Long called the Forgotten War, it was brutal and unforgiving. Initial stages were a disaster, an exhausting retreat to India's borders. The turning point came at Imphal and Kohima. Japan's U-Go offensive triggered savage fighting. Imphal became a crucible for the Indian army. At Kohima, a small garrison held out, fighting hand-to-hand over a tennis court. Slim's 14th Army, the world's largest, was mostly Indian, retrained for jungle warfare. Mules, Dakotas and Indian engineers built roads and airfields from jungle. Imphal Kohima shattered Japan's invincibility. Indian troops advanced to liberate Rangoon, turning the tide in Asia. Beyond the maps and strategic reports lies the heart of the story, the voices of the men themselves. To truly understand their role, we must listen, piecing together a history from fragments of memory that traveled thousands of miles. In fading letters, often dictated and worded to pass the censor's pen, and in rare interviews recorded decades later, the reality of life at the front comes alive. These accounts are precious windows into their world. In the brutal mountain campaign in Italy, soldiers accustomed to the flat plains of India faced a new kind of hell. One Punjabi soldier wrote home, "The ground here is made of stone, and the enemy is hidden in the stone. Every night we climb, and every day we fight. The shells fall like a terrible rain." Tethered to home, soldiers fought for the honor of their family and village. One wrote, "Tell my mother I pray every day, and that I fight for the honor of our village." That duty was sustained by the bonds forged in fire. The regiment Ori became a new family, as another simply stated, "My comrades are my brothers, we look after one another." This bravery was recognized at the highest level. 29 Victoria Crosses went to Indian soldiers, each medal a story of courage against impossible odds. Consider Sepoy Kamal Ram. At just 19, he single-handedly silenced multiple German machine gun posts in Italy, earning him the Victoria Cross. In the dense jungles of Burma, Naik Agan Singh Rai of the 5th Royal Gurkha Rifles led a charge against a key Japanese position. Under withering fire, he personally cleared 3 enemy bunkers, inspiring his company to seize the objective. But the war was not only fought in trenches. For many who had never left their villages, it was a startling encounter. War forged unexpected bonds, from Madras to Manchester, across ruins and ration tins. They discovered new languages and foods, broadening horizons amidst the chaos. These were moments of humanity in a world at war. A British officer tried to capture this complex spirit. He wrote, "They complained little. Their courage was humbling, yet a deep sadness ran deep. It was the sadness of exile, of loss, and the unspoken weight of what they had seen and done so far from home. The contribution was paid in blood and suffering. Over 87,000 from undivided India killed or missing, 64,000 wounded. Each number is a shattered family, a village in mourning, a future cut short. A telegram delivered grief to distant hamlets. Sons and husbands lost. Households plunged into hardship. Many returned with wounds unseen. PTSD had no name, but it had weight. The village's quiet felt alien. Silence walled off families that could not understand. Pensions were meager. Work was scarce. Whole communities felt the absence of their strongest. The debt lingered long after the guns fell silent. The Indian soldier defended freedom abroad while his nation remained unfree. This contradiction shaped soldiers and leaders alike. War service coexisted uneasily with the independence movement. Loyalty to regiments and officers was real and earned under fire. News from home stirred a growing national identity. We fight the German and the Japanese to make other countries free. When we have won, may our service be remembered, and may we have our freedom. Serving with British, Australians, and Americans made inequality harder to accept. Britain's reliance on Indian manpower gave leaders leverage for independence. They fought Axis abroad and an idea at home. Bravery overseas strengthened freedom's claim at home. Victory came, but India's triumph was bittersweet. A weakened empire and a new British government made independence inevitable. But unity gave way to polarization. Visions of India diverged. The plural army that fought as one now faced division by faith. Returning soldiers found a nation on the brink of civil war. Men who bled together in Burma and Africa now stood on opposite sides of a new border. The victory of 1945 led into the tragedy of 1947. Independence was born amid fire and flight, millions displaced, up to 2 million dead. The Indian army itself was split. Their sacrifice dismantled empire, but the freedom they imagined was not whole. For decades, the story of 2.5 million Indian volunteers went almost entirely untold. A silence that echoed across generations, a chapter torn from the pages of global history. While the battles of Europe and the Pacific dominated popular memory, the largest volunteer army in history was rendered nearly invisible, its immense sacrifice fading from view. Dominant Western narratives, shaped by the victors, left little room for the complexities of colonial armies. Acknowledging their contribution meant confronting the uncomfortable truths of empire. Simultaneously, in a newly independent India, the political climate celebrated freedom fighters. Soldiers who had served the Raj occupied an awkward, painful space, their loyalty questioned and their service viewed through the prism of colonialism. This dual silence, from both the former colonial power and the new nation, did more than just forget. It actively denied agency to millions. It distorted our understanding of World War II, painting an incomplete picture of a truly global conflict. But today, that silence is being broken. A new generation of historians, writers, and descendants are painstakingly reclaiming this history. They are delving into dusty archives, unearthing forgotten letters, and recording the fading oral histories of the last surviving veterans and their families. Each document, each memory, is a thread being woven back into the main narrative. Through this work, we see the Indian soldier's story for what it is, not Indian or British alone, but a quintessential world story. Their presence in North Africa, Italy, and Burma was pivotal, and their experience speaks to the complex realities of empire, identity, and loyalty in a world at war. Behind the grand narratives are countless individual lives of courage, sacrifice, and hope. To remember them is more than a historical exercise, it is an act of justice. It is to honor their complex legacy and finally to complete our picture of the past.